In the ancient land of Dahomey, there was a village called Ajara, where the sun always shone and the air smelt of sweet, ripe fruits. The farms were full of yams and millet, and the river sparkled with fresh water. Life was good and it was simple. The people of Ajara were protected by Aseida, the goddess of unity and life. She watched over them like a loving mother, making the rain to fall and the crops to grow. Her magic filled the land, and the people felt her presence in the cool breeze and rustling leaves. Every morning, the villagers gathered at her shrine, offering sacrifices and praising her. Under Asaida's care, the village thrived. The people of Ajara helped each other, and no one went hungry. It was a land of peace and magic, full of love and gratitude for Asaida's blessings. But far away, hidden in the shadows, was Zoram, the god of greed. He watched with angry eyes, jealous of the people's love for Aseida. He wanted the village for himself, to fill it with greed and chaos. He longed to take over Aseida's power and turn the hearts of the people away from her. While the people of Ajara slept peacefully, Zoram's dark magic began to grow. He whispered through the wind at night, spreading mischief in the shadows. But Zoram knew he couldn't take the village by force. Asaida's protection was too strong, and her bond with the people too deep. He needed a clever plan to break that bond and make the people forget Aseida. In Ajara, there was a king named Ayo, a kind and wise ruler loved by all. He was blessed by Aseida just like the kings before him. Her blessing flowed through the royal family, guiding King Ayo to rule with love and fairness. But not everyone in the palace had a pure heart. Tunde, the king's closest advisor, was secretly jealous. As children, he and Ayo had grown up together, but as they became older, jealousy filled Tunde's heart. He saw how the people loved and praised the king, and it made him envious. Tunde believed he was smarter than the king and deserved more. Even though he lived in luxury, it wasn't enough. His jealousy twisted his heart and longed to take Ayo's place on the throne. Zoram, watching from the darkness, sensed Tunde's growing jealousy. One night, as Tunde slept, he had a strange and frightening dream. He heard the evil cry of a black vulture, loud and haunting. When he woke up, the sound lingered in the air, filling him with fear. Tunde looked out of his window and saw something that nearly made his heart to stop. Perched on a tree branch was a black evil vulture, with its eyes glowing softly in the moonlight, as if it was waiting for him. Without thinking, Tunde stood up and followed the bird. It flew silently, leading him out of the palace and into the dark forest. The further he went, the darker and thicker the forest became. Soon, Tunde found himself in a place he had never seen before. The air grew cold, and the trees seemed to have dark magic. In the middle of the forest, the vulture stopped, and from the shadows, Zoram, the god of greed, spoke. He had been waiting for this moment, knowing Tunde's jealousy will make him easy to control.
I've been waiting for you, Tunde,
Zoram said, his voice like the rustling of dry leaves.
Your heart is full of jealousy, and I can give you what you desire most.
Tunde, trembling but curious, asked, What do you want from me? Zoram replied,
I will give you power, more than King Ayo. You will rule the land, and the people will bow to you.
Tunde's heart raced. But how? Everyone knows Aseida has chosen Ayo's family to rule. Zoram laughed.
There is a price. To gain this power, you must serve me. We will destroy Asaida's secret tree. It is the source of a magic. Without it, our power will weaken, and the people will no longer be protected.
Tunde hesitated, with fear creeping in. But the promise of power was too great. If I do this, Tunde asked, will you make me stronger than Ayo? Zoram laughed darkly.
Much stronger. You will rule Ajara. But first, you must break the bond that holds this land together.
After Zoram and the black vulture vanished, Tunde was left all alone in the dark forest. The promise of power echoed in his mind. As he wandered through the trees, deep in thought, he heard some voices. Sitting around a small fire were 6 thieves. They looked thin and hungry. Their clothes were torn and tattered. These men had been chased out of the village for stealing, and now they were living like outcasts. When they saw Tunde, they whispered to each other. "He looks important," said one of the thieves. "Maybe he has something worth stealing." Without warning, the thieves jumped up and surrounded Tunde. "Give us everything you have," one of them demanded, holding a blunt knife. But Tunde didn't flinch. He knew this was a sign from Zoram. "Wait," he said calmly. "I can give you something far better than anything you could steal from me." "What could you have that's better than gold or food?" one of them asked, lowering his knife gently. Tunde looked each of them in the eye. "I can give you gold beyond your wildest dreams, but first you must help me with something important." The thieves looked at each other, unsure. One of them, an older thief, asked cautiously, "And what is it? What do you want us to do?" Tunde took a deep breath and told them Zoram's plan. "We must destroy Asaida's sacred tree before daybreak. It's the source of her magic. Without it, her power will fade and the village will be ours." The oldest thief, shocked, stepped back. "Destroy Asaida's tree? Abomination! The goddess will curse us!" But the thieves, hungry and desperate, saw an opportunity. "What has the goddess done for us?" said one of them. We've been living like animals. Maybe it's time to take control of our fate. The oldest thief was still scared, but the others began to agree with Tunde. With Tunde's help, said the thief, we can become rich and powerful. We won't have to live like this anymore. Finally, even the old thief, trembling with fear, nodded his head. The promise of a better life was too tempting to refuse. Tunde smiled. Good, he said. We begin tomorrow. And so, under the cover of the night, Tunde and the thieves planned their wicked deed, ready to strike at the heart of Asaida's power. The next morning, the people of Ajara woke up to a terrible shock. The sacred tree of Aseida, the tree that gave the village life and power, had been cut down. It lay broken on the ground, and the sky had turned grey, heavy with clouds that hid the sun. At Asaida's shrine, everywhere was silent. The air that once carried her blessings now felt cold. The fruits and honey left as offerings were untouched. The people could no longer feel her magic. They gathered around the fallen tree. Their hearts were heavy. Children who once laughed and played now held on to their parents, frightened by the dark grey clouds that hung above the village. In the farms, crops started to wither and die. The yams and cassava that once stood tall and strong were now rotten. The river that was once full of life started to dry up. Hunger started to creep into the village, and whispers spread. Has Aseida abandoned us? Meanwhile, in the palace, King Ayo lay in bed, burning with fever. All the healers exchanged worried looks, knowing that the king's illness was more than just a normal sickness. His strength was fading fast, just like the land. But while the people of Ajara suffered, Tunde felt something very different. He could feel Zoram's power growing inside of him. The weaker the village became, the stronger Tunde felt. He watched as the villagers fought over the little food that was left. Greed and chaos had spread through the land, just as Zoram had promised. Tunde smiled to himself. This was only the beginning. With the help of the thieves, Tunde stole King Ayo's gold, which had been kept in the palace for the people. They hid it deep in the mountain, far away from the villagers' eyes. The mountain became their secret fortress. With the thieves by his side, Tunde began to plan how he would overthrow the kingdom. But while Tunde and the thieves grew rich from their evil deeds, something else was happening in a small village far away from the palace, around the outskirts of Ajara. In that village lived two young brothers, Ademola and Olumide. They lived a simple life. When they were old enough to make a living, the brothers decided to sell firewood. Every morning, they went into the forest, chopped down trees, and bundled the firewood to sell for 1 franc each. Olumide, the younger brother, spent his money as quickly as he earned it, hoping that luck will favor him. Ademola, the older brother, was wiser. He saved his money, dreaming of a way out of their poverty. They lived like this for a very long time. Then one morning, as Ademola was resting from chopping firewood, he climbed a tall tree to get a better view of the land. From the top, he saw something unusual. Ademola could see the mountain where the thieves lived. He became curious because the bushes and trees around the mountain had been cleared up. What could be up there? Ademola wondered. He stayed in the tree, watching and waiting. As the sun climbed higher, a group of thieves approached the mountain. Ademola watched closely as they came closer.